Sometimes the smallest thing a person loses is the one thing that can change another life forever. Snow drifted softly outside the tall windows of Bellamy's Steakhouse, while Manhattan glowed gold beneath the December night. Inside the restaurant, crystal glasses shimmered beneath warm chandelier light, as wealthy investors laughed over $100 wine and conversations that sounded important enough to move markets by morning. Emma Collins moved quietly through it all, carrying a silver tray balanced steadily in one hand. She had worked double shifts for 3 straight weeks, yet somehow her posture remained calm, graceful, almost invisible. That was the strange thing about women like Emma. People remembered how efficiently she refilled coffee cups, but rarely remembered her face afterward. At exactly 11:14, Table 7 finally emptied after a 3-hour private dinner attended by some of the richest men in New York. Emma watched them leave through the front glass doors beneath a swirl of winter coats and valet tickets. One man stood out from the rest without trying. Tall, composed, dark charcoal overcoat tailored perfectly against broad shoulders. Nathaniel Brooks, billionaire investor, owner of Brooks Capital, a man financial magazines called untouchable. Emma only knew him as the customer who never looked directly at waitresses when speaking. Table 7's yours, her coworker Mia called while stacking menus near the hostess stand. Emma nodded quietly and walked toward the booth carrying a damp cloth and empty check holder. Half-finished whiskey glasses still reflected the warm restaurant lights. Steak knives rested carelessly beside folded napkins, the expensive kind of mess left behind by people accustomed to others cleaning their lives for them. Emma began gathering dishes silently until something dark beneath the booth caught her eye. A leather wallet. Black. Heavy. Expensive enough to pay 3 months of her rent. She bent down carefully and picked it up with both hands. Real Italian leather. Cold from the marble floor. Emma glanced toward the restaurant entrance instinctively, but Nathaniel Brooks was already gone. Snow blew softly outside, where black luxury cars disappeared into Manhattan traffic. Someone forget something? Mia asked while approaching. Emma held up the wallet slightly. Mia whistled under her breath. That thing probably has more money inside than my checking account. Emma gave a faint, tired smile before opening the wallet carefully to check identification. Several platinum cards reflected beneath the restaurant lights alongside folded $100 bills stacked neatly inside. Then she saw the driver's license. Nathaniel Brooks. Age 38. Manhattan address overlooking Central Park. Emma reached for the restaurant phone automatically to call security. But before she could close the wallet, something slipped loose from behind one of the card sleeves and floated gently onto the table. An old photograph. Emma froze instantly. The picture had faded around the edges with age. A younger man stood smiling beneath summer sunlight while holding 2 little girls in his arms. One child laughed toward the camera. The other hid shyly against his shoulder. Emma stared at the photograph without breathing. Her fingers trembled slowly against the edge of the table. Because the man in the photograph looked exactly like the framed picture sitting beside her mother's bedside for nearly 20 years. William Brooks. Emma lowered herself quietly into the empty booth, while restaurant noise faded around her like distant waves. No, that was impossible. Her mother had spent her entire life telling Emma almost nothing about her father except his first name and the fact that he disappeared before Emma turned 5 years old. She never showed anger when speaking about him, only sadness, the kind that sat quietly inside people for years until it became part of their voice. Emma looked closer at the photograph. The younger girl hiding shyly against William's shoulder had light blonde hair, blue eyes, a small silver necklace shaped like a snowflake. Emma's hand rose slowly toward the necklace hidden beneath her waitress uniform. The same snowflake pendant rested against her skin right now. Cold. Familiar. Her breathing became uneven. Emma. Mia's voice sounded distant suddenly. You okay? Emma blinked quickly and looked up. Yeah. But her voice sounded wrong even to herself. Mia glanced toward the photograph. Family picture? Emma immediately slid it back into the wallet. Too fast. No, Mia studied her for a second longer, but finally shrugged. You should probably turn that in before management thinks you stole it. Emma nodded faintly. Stole it. The idea almost made her laugh quietly. If William Brooks really was connected somehow to Nathaniel Brooks, then life had already stolen enough from everyone involved. Outside the windows, snow continued falling across Manhattan while Emma stood alone beside Table 7. Holding a billionaire's lost wallet against her chest, like something fragile enough to break open the past itself. Her phone buzzed softly inside her apron pocket. A text from her mother. Do not forget tomorrow is your day off. You need rest, sweetheart. Emma stared at the message for several seconds before slowly typing back. Mom, did Dad ever have another family? 3 blinking dots appeared almost immediately, then disappeared, then returned again. Finally, only one message came through. Where did you hear that name? Emma felt the restaurant suddenly become too warm around her. Too small. Across the dining room, managers counted receipts while waiters laughed quietly about tips and holiday bonuses, completely unaware that one forgotten wallet had just reopened a secret buried for decades. Emma looked down at the photograph one last time before carefully sliding it back inside the leather wallet. Then she whispered something almost too soft to hear even herself. Who are you really, William Brooks? Outside, snow covered the city in silence while somewhere uptown, billionaire Nathaniel Brooks had not yet realized he lost the one thing capable of changing his entire life. Emma Collins barely slept that night. Snow pressed softly against the apartment windows while the old radiator near her bed clicked every few minutes like a nervous heartbeat refusing to settle. The billionaire's wallet rested untouched on the small kitchen table beside a half-finished cup of cold tea. She had returned home just after midnight, still wearing her black waitress shoes dusted with Manhattan slush, and found her mother already awake in the tiny living room beneath the yellow glow of an old lamp. Caroline Collins looked tired in the way only long years and quiet struggles could make someone tired. Gray strands mixed through her blonde hair now, though her eyes remained soft and kind beneath the exhaustion life had carved gently into her face. Emma remembered standing silently in the apartment doorway while snow melted from her coat onto the hardwood floor. Mom, she whispered carefully, who was William Brooks? The question alone changed the room. Caroline slowly lowered the book in her hands without answering immediately. For several seconds, only the wind outside spoke through the old windows. Then her mother looked toward the wallet sitting on the table. Where did you hear that name? Emma crossed the apartment slowly and pulled the faded photograph from the leather wallet again. Caroline's face lost all color the moment she saw it. Her fingers tightened visibly around the arm of the chair. Oh God! Emma sat beside her quietly. That little girl in the photograph. Caroline closed her eyes briefly before whispering, that is you. Emma felt the room tilt around her. She looked down at the photograph again. The blonde child hiding shyly against William Brooks's shoulder. The snowflake necklace. The same eyes staring back at her from 20 years earlier. Then who was the other girl? Caroline said nothing. Silence settled heavily between them. Emma finally understood something painful in that moment. Her mother had spent years protecting secrets that never stopped hurting her. Mom. Caroline looked toward the dark window where snow covered the Brooklyn rooftops outside. William Brooks was not supposed to fall in love with me. Her voice sounded distant now. Careful, like someone reopening an old wound slowly enough not to bleed too fast. Emma listened without moving. We met before he became wealthy. Caroline continued softly. Back when he was still trying to build Brooks Capital from nothing. A sad smile touched her lips briefly. He used to take the subway with holes in his shoes. Emma could barely imagine billionaire Nathaniel Brooks ever living a life like that. Your father was kind, Caroline whispered. Not polished, not powerful, just kind. Emma stared down at the photograph. Then why did he leave? Caroline's eyes filled slowly with tears she clearly hated showing. Because people like William do not stay poor forever. And when money entered his world, everything changed. Snow drifted endlessly outside, while Caroline finally told the truth she had buried for over 2 decades. William Brooks met Evelyn Brooks through investors connected to Manhattan banking families. Wealthy families. Powerful families. The kind that built futures through marriage and appearances long before love entered the conversation. By the time I learned I was pregnant with you, Caroline said quietly, William was already engaged. Emma felt her chest tighten painfully. Did he know about me? Caroline nodded slowly. He knew. Then why was he never there? Caroline looked toward the photograph again. Because he thought sending money was enough to fix guilt. Emma stood abruptly and walked toward the kitchen window. Brooklyn lights blurred through falling snow while anger and sadness tangled together inside her chest. All her life, she imagined her father as a mystery. Maybe dead, maybe careless, maybe simply gone. But this truth felt worse somehow. He knew. He visited twice after you were born. Caroline continued softly behind her. Always late at night. Always apologizing. Emma wiped quickly beneath her eyes before turning back. And the other girl? Caroline hesitated again, then whispered the answer Emma already feared. Nathaniel Brooks. The name landed heavily inside the apartment. Billionaire investor. Owner of the lost wallet. The man who sat 20 feet away from her at Bellamy's steakhouse without either of them realizing they shared the same father. Emma laughed once quietly. Not because anything felt funny. Because sometimes truth became too strange for tears immediately. So I accidentally stole my half-brother's wallet. Caroline shook her head instantly. No. Emma, listen to me carefully. Her mother stood slowly and walked closer. Nathaniel Brooks does not know you exist. Emma looked back toward the photograph resting beneath the kitchen light. But his father did. Caroline's expression broke softly at that. William loved you. Emma swallowed hard. Love should have looked different. Neither spoke again for a while after that. The apartment grew quieter as snowfall deepened outside. Somewhere upstairs, pipes rattled softly through old walls. Ordinary sounds. Ordinary life. Yet nothing felt ordinary anymore. Around 3:15 in the morning, Emma finally picked up the wallet again. Inside remained stacks of cash large enough to solve half her problems instantly. Past due electric bills. Rent. Her mother's medical prescriptions sitting unfilled on the counter for 2 weeks now. She could take some of it. Nathaniel Brooks would never notice. But Emma carefully closed the wallet instead. Because no matter what William Brooks failed to become, her mother raised her with one unshakable truth. Quiet dignity mattered most when life gave you reasons to lose it. The next morning Manhattan woke beneath fresh snow and pale winter sunlight, reflecting across skyscraper glass. At exactly 9:42, Nathaniel Brooks stepped into the lobby of Brooks Capital while assistants rushed nervously around him carrying phones and market reports. He moved through the marble building with the same cold efficiency Emma remembered from the restaurant. Untouchable. Controlled. But halfway toward the elevator, he stopped suddenly and checked the inside pocket of his overcoat again. Empty. His wallet was gone. For the first time that morning, billionaire Nathaniel Brooks looked genuinely unsettled. Not because of the money. Because inside that wallet sat the only photograph of his father he still carried. By 10:15 that morning, Brooks Capital already felt colder than the weather outside. Assistants moved through the glass corridors with lowered voices, while financial news played silently across giant lobby screens beneath silver company logos. Nathaniel Brooks walked through the building without speaking to anyone. His dark overcoat remained buttoned despite the warmth inside, and one hand stayed pressed unconsciously against the empty pocket where his wallet should have been. Most people assumed billionaires worried about money first. Nathaniel did not. Not anymore. We already contacted Bellamy's steakhouse, his assistant Lauren explained while following him toward the executive elevator. Management is checking security footage. Nathaniel nodded once. And the credit cards? Frozen temporarily. The elevator doors slid open silently around them. Lauren hesitated before speaking again. Sir, are you sure the photograph was inside the wallet last night? Nathaniel looked up sharply. Lauren immediately regretted the question. Yes, he answered quietly. The elevator climbed toward the 52nd floor while Manhattan disappeared beneath them through the glass walls. Snow still covered the city in pale white layers. Nathaniel stared at it without really seeing anything except an old photograph folded behind worn leather card sleeves. The only photograph his father ever allowed himself to keep visible after Evelyn Brooks passed away 3 years earlier. William Brooks hated discussing the past near the end of his life. Every attempt Nathaniel made to ask questions about old family history ended the same way. Silence. Then whiskey. Then more silence. Some memories are expensive. His father once told him quietly during a winter dinner much like this one. Especially the ones people survive. Nathaniel never understood what that meant. Until now. Inside his office overlooking Central Park, floor-to-ceiling windows reflected pale winter light across marble shelves and framed financial awards collected over decades. Everything looked immaculate, ordered, controlled. Yet Nathaniel felt strangely unsettled standing there alone. He removed his coat slowly and loosened his tie before walking toward the hidden cabinet beside his desk. Inside sat an untouched bottle of bourbon his father once drank every Christmas Eve after midnight. Nathaniel stared at it for several seconds before closing the cabinet again. He had spent years avoiding nostalgia. It made people weak, distracted, emotional. That was what he told himself, anyway. His office phone rang softly. Lauren again. Bellamy's located the wallet. Nathaniel straightened immediately. Good. A waitress found it after closing. Nathaniel exhaled quietly. Relief arrived first. Then something else followed behind it. Curiosity. Has she returned it yet? Not yet. She asked if someone from Brooks Capital could confirm ownership before releasing it. Nathaniel almost smiled faintly at that. Careful. Smart. Most people would have either stolen the cash or handed the wallet immediately to restaurant management, hoping for a reward. What is her name? Emma Collins. The name meant nothing to him. Yet for some reason he repeated it silently once anyway. Emma Collins. I will pick it up personally, he said. Lauren sounded surprised. Sir, security can handle. Personally, Nathaniel repeated calmly. After the call ended, he stood quietly beside the window again. Below him, tiny figures crossed snowy Manhattan sidewalks, carrying coffee cups and umbrellas through freezing wind. Ordinary lives moving forward beneath a city that barely noticed them. Nathaniel rarely thought about ordinary people anymore unless business required it. His world had become boardrooms and acquisition meetings and private elevators separating wealth from everything else. But something about this morning felt different. Because for the first time in years, his father's photograph was sitting in someone else's hands. Meanwhile downtown, Emma Collins adjusted the sleeves of her black waitress uniform while standing alone near the front counter at Bellamy's Steakhouse. The restaurant looked softer during daylight hours. Less glamorous. More honest somehow. Morning sunlight reflected against empty wine glasses while kitchen staff prepared for the lunch crowd behind swinging doors. The billionaire's wallet remained inside a sealed envelope beside the register. Emma tried not to look at it. Failed repeatedly. You have checked the clock 6 times in 3 minutes, Mia whispered while stacking menus nearby. Emma forced a faint smile. I am waiting for someone. Rich? Emma glanced toward the envelope. Probably. Mia laughed quietly. You say that like rich people are another species. Emma looked out through the restaurant windows where snow drifted softly across Fifth Avenue traffic. Sometimes they are. Her phone buzzed gently inside her apron pocket. Another text from her mother. Please be careful today. Emma stared at the message longer than necessary. Careful of what exactly? Nathaniel Brooks did not know who she was. He did not know the photograph inside his wallet had already changed everything. To him, she was only a waitress returning lost property. But Emma could not stop thinking about the little girl in that faded photograph. The one standing beside young Nathaniel Brooks beneath summer sunlight years before either of them understood how complicated adults could become. Earth to Emma, Mia whispered suddenly. Emma looked up. A black luxury sedan had just stopped outside Bellamy's entrance beneath falling snow. The driver stepped out first, opening the rear door while pedestrians slowed instinctively along the sidewalk. Nathaniel Brooks emerged from the car wearing a charcoal wool coat and dark gloves, his expression calm in the way expensive buildings and powerful men often were. Conversations inside the restaurant softened almost instantly. Even people who did not recognize him sensed wealth before he spoke a single word. Emma felt her heartbeat quicken unexpectedly as Nathaniel stepped through the restaurant doors carrying winter air in with him. He looked exactly like the child in the photograph. Same eyes, same quiet distance in his face. For one strange second, Emma saw both versions of him at once. The billionaire standing beneath chandelier light, and the little boy smiling beside her father decades earlier. Nathaniel removed his gloves slowly while scanning the restaurant. Then his eyes landed on Emma standing behind the counter holding his wallet. Neither moved immediately. Outside, snow continued falling over Manhattan, while something old and unfinished quietly stepped back into both their lives. Nathaniel Brooks walked toward the restaurant counter with the calm confidence of someone accustomed to entering rooms already owned by him. Snow melted slowly from the shoulders of his dark wool coat, while quiet conversations followed him through Bellamy's Steakhouse like distant waves. Emma Collins stood perfectly still behind the register with the sealed envelope resting beneath her fingertips. For one strange second, The entire restaurant seemed suspended between two lives that should never have crossed. Nathaniel stopped in front of her and removed one black leather glove carefully. I was told someone found my wallet. His voice sounded lower than Emma expected. Controlled. Polite without warmth attached to it. The kind of voice built inside boardrooms and private meetings where emotions only complicated negotiations. Emma nodded once and slid the envelope gently across the counter. Everything inside should still be there. Nathaniel glanced at the envelope but did not pick it up immediately. Instead, his eyes settled briefly on Emma's face. Something unreadable flickered across his expression for half a second. Recognition, maybe. Or confusion. Then it disappeared again behind practiced composure. You opened it? Emma hesitated only slightly. To confirm ownership. Nathaniel finally took the envelope and opened it carefully beneath the restaurant lights. Credit cards. Cash. Identification. Everything exactly where it belonged. Then his fingers paused when he reached the photograph tucked behind the card sleeve. Emma looked away instinctively before he noticed. Too late. Nathaniel lifted the faded photograph slowly and stared at it for several seconds. The atmosphere around him changed almost immediately. Softer somehow. Less distant. Nobody else touched this? He asked quietly without looking up. Emma felt her heartbeat quicken again. No, technically not a lie. She touched the photograph, not the memory attached to it. Nathaniel studied the picture longer than necessary while snow drifted behind him through the restaurant windows. Emma watched him carefully now, the slight tightening around his jaw. The way his thumb rested near the corner of the photograph, like he was afraid it might disappear if he moved too quickly. People revealed themselves most honestly through the things they protected gently. This picture matters to you, Emma said before she could stop herself. Nathaniel finally looked up. His gray eyes sharpened slightly. Why would you say that? Emma immediately regretted speaking. Most people would check the money first. Nathaniel slid the photograph back into the wallet slowly. Money is replaceable. Emma almost laughed quietly at how impossible that sentence sounded coming from a billionaire. But something in his face stopped her. He meant it. My father carried this photograph everywhere, Nathaniel continued unexpectedly. Even after it started falling apart. Emma swallowed carefully. Your father? Nathaniel nodded once. William Brooks. Hearing the name spoken aloud by him felt different somehow. Heavier. More real. Emma lowered her eyes toward the counter to hide the emotion rising unexpectedly inside her chest. You knew him well? Nathaniel asked suddenly. The question startled her enough that she looked up too fast. Nathaniel noticed immediately. He noticed everything, Emma realized. The hesitation. The trembling fingers she tried hiding beneath the counter. The fact that she looked at the photograph like it belonged partly to her somehow. No, Emma answered softly. Not really. Nathaniel remained still for a moment longer, studying her in unsettling silence. Then he reached inside the wallet and pulled out several $100 bills. Emma shook her head instantly. You do not need to do that. You returned a wallet most people would not. It was not mine. Nathaniel held the money out calmly. Take it anyway. Emma looked at the bills. Enough to cover her mother's prescriptions for months. Enough to fix the heating system in their apartment before the worst of winter arrived. Her fingers almost moved toward the money automatically. Almost. Then she stepped back instead. No, thank you. Nathaniel's expression changed slightly. Genuine surprise this time. Emma forced herself to hold his gaze. My mother taught me returning lost things should not come with a price tag. Something quiet settled between them after that. Not awkwardness. Something stranger. Nathaniel slowly returned the cash to his wallet without argument. Across the restaurant, Mia pretended very badly not to watch everything unfolding from near the hostess stand. You are unusual, Nathaniel said finally. Emma looked down at the register receipts. People usually say difficult instead. A faint smile almost appeared at the corner of Nathaniel's mouth before disappearing again. What is your name? Emma Collins. Nathaniel repeated it silently once like testing how it sounded. Thank you, Miss Collins. He turned slightly toward the restaurant entrance. Then stopped. One more thing. Emma looked up again. Nathaniel held the wallet loosely in one hand now, while snowlight reflected softly across the restaurant windows behind him. Did you look at the photograph closely? The question landed gently, quietly. Yet Emma felt her pulse jump hard enough to hurt. She could lie. Probably should lie. But something about the way Nathaniel asked made dishonesty feel impossible. Yes, she admitted softly. Nathaniel watched her carefully. Most people never notice the details. Emma thought about the little girl wearing the snowflake necklace beside William Brooks. About her mother crying quietly in the apartment last night. About 20 years of unanswered questions sitting folded inside one faded photograph. Some details are hard to ignore, she whispered. For the first time since entering Bellamy's steakhouse, Nathaniel Brooks looked genuinely unsettled. Not angry, not suspicious, just suddenly aware that something important had shifted beneath the surface of an ordinary morning. Outside, snow continued falling over Manhattan while a black luxury sedan waited beside the curb. Nathaniel slid the wallet back inside his coat pocket slowly, but kept his eyes on Emma. Have we met before? Emma's breath caught for half a second. Then she shook her head gently. No, another silence followed. Long enough to feel dangerous. Finally, Nathaniel nodded once and turned toward the door. But just before leaving, he glanced back at her one last time. Not at her uniform, not at the restaurant counter, at her face, specifically her eyes. Emma recognized the exact moment it happened. The moment he noticed something familiar he could not explain. Because the expression crossing Nathaniel Brooks's face was not recognition yet. But it was close enough to make both of them afraid. The rest of the afternoon passed slowly for Emma Collins after Nathaniel Brooks left Bellamy's steakhouse. Snow continued falling beyond the restaurant windows while lunchtime conversations blurred into background noise she barely heard anymore. Every time the front door opened, cold air swept briefly through the dining room along with the strange feeling that her life had shifted slightly off balance. Mia leaned against the coffee station while polishing silverware and watching Emma carefully. Okay, she whispered finally. What exactly was that? Emma looked up from arranging menus. What was what? That billionaire looking at you like he recognized you from another lifetime. Emma forced a small laugh that sounded unconvincing even to herself. You watch too many movies. And you are terrible at lying. Emma lowered her eyes again before answering softly. It was just a wallet. But both of them knew that was no longer true. Across Manhattan, Nathaniel Brooks sat alone inside the back seat of his black sedan while traffic crawled through snowy afternoon streets beneath gray winter skies. The wallet rested beside him unopened. His driver spoke quietly through the privacy divider. Office, sir. Nathaniel stared out the window without answering immediately. Emma Collins's face remained fixed strangely in his mind, specifically her eyes. The same pale blue-gray color staring back at him from old family photographs stored in boxes he had not opened since his father's funeral. Sir. Nathaniel finally looked down at the wallet again. Slowly, he opened it and removed the faded photograph once more. William Brooks smiling beneath summer sunlight. Young Nathaniel sitting proudly on his father's shoulders. The little blonde girl beside them wearing the snowflake necklace. Nathaniel studied the image carefully now. Not as memory, as evidence. Then his eyes narrowed slightly. Because for the first time in years, he noticed something written faintly on the back of the photograph. His father's handwriting. For my two girls. Nathaniel stopped breathing for half a second. Two girls. Not one. Snow drifted past the car windows while something cold settled deep inside his chest. He flipped the photograph over again slowly. Young Nathaniel. The blonde child. William Brooks standing between them. Two girls. Nathaniel looked up sharply. Turn around. The driver blinked in the mirror. Sir. Bellamy's Steakhouse. Meanwhile in Brooklyn, Caroline Collins stood alone inside the apartment kitchen, holding an old cardboard box she had not opened in years. Dust covered the corners. Faded tape barely kept the lid together anymore. Emma entered quietly after work just before sunset, still exhausted from the long day. Mom. Caroline looked up slowly. Her eyes already looked tired before the conversation even began. I thought maybe it is time. Emma closed the apartment door softly behind her. Outside, snow-covered parked cars and fire escapes beneath pale orange evening light. Caroline set the old box carefully onto the kitchen table beside unpaid bills and prescription bottles. William brought these over the last time I saw him. Emma approached slowly. Inside the box sat old letters tied with ribbon, faded photographs, bank receipts, and a silver wristwatch resting carefully inside a velvet pouch. Emma picked up the watch gently. Her breath caught instantly. Brooks engraved across the back. Expensive. Elegant. Familiar. Because Nathaniel Brooks wore the exact same watch earlier that morning at the restaurant. Older version. Same design. Same engraving style. He said it belonged to the Brooks men for generations, Caroline whispered. Emma looked up slowly. Why would he leave this here? Caroline stared toward the darkening window. Because he knew he was dying. Silence filled the apartment heavily after that. Emma carefully opened one of the old letters. William's handwriting covered the pages in blue ink, slightly faded by time. I wanted to tell Nathaniel the truth this Christmas. He deserves to know he has a sister. Emma's hands trembled slightly. Another letter. Another apology. Another promise delayed too long. Caroline sat quietly across from her daughter. He kept saying he would fix everything someday. Emma swallowed painfully. But he never did. Caroline nodded once. Some people spend their entire lives preparing to be brave. At that exact moment, headlights swept across the apartment window from the snowy street below. Then a black luxury sedan stopped beside the curb. Emma froze immediately. So did Caroline. The same car from Bellamy's steakhouse. Emma moved carefully toward the window and looked down. Nathaniel Brooks stepped out alone beneath falling snow, while city lights reflected softly across the dark fabric of his overcoat. He stood there for a moment looking up at the apartment building like someone uncertain whether to continue forward. Emma's heartbeat quickened instantly. How does he know where we live? Caroline whispered. Emma looked down toward the letter still open in her hands. Then toward the old photograph beside it. 2 girls. Nathaniel must have read the writing on the back. Down below, Nathaniel slowly reached into his coat pocket and removed the faded photograph again beneath the glow of the streetlight. Even from 4 floors above, Emma recognized the exact moment he looked up toward her apartment window. Their eyes met through falling snow and old glass, and 20 years of silence neither of them created. Nathaniel did not wave, did not move. He simply stood there holding the photograph, while the truth slowly began finding its way into both their lives at the exact same time. Snow continued falling over Brooklyn, while Nathaniel Brooks stood motionless beneath the streetlight outside Emma Collins's apartment building. The old photograph rested in his gloved hand now, edges bending softly in the winter wind. For floors above him, Emma remained frozen beside the apartment window with her mother standing quietly behind her. Nobody spoke for several seconds. The city itself seemed to lower its voice around moments like this. Finally, Caroline Collins exhaled slowly. He knows. Emma looked down toward Nathaniel again. Not everything. Caroline's expression turned distant. Sad. Enough. Down on the street, Nathaniel stared up at the apartment window while memories moved quietly through his mind like fragments finally aligning into something impossible to ignore. Emma's eyes at the restaurant. The snowflake necklace. The way she looked at the photograph like it belonged partly to her. And now this apartment address connected directly to old financial records attached to his father's private accounts from years ago. Nathaniel rarely believed in coincidence, especially not the kind that arrived carrying his father's face. Inside the apartment, Emma stepped back from the window slowly. I should go downstairs. Caroline grabbed her wrist gently before she could move. Emma. Her mother's voice trembled slightly now. You do not owe the Brooks family anything. Emma looked toward the old letters still scattered across the kitchen table. William Brooks's apologies. His promises. 20 years of unfinished truths folded into fading paper and forgotten Christmas cards. Maybe not, Emma whispered softly. But I think he deserves honesty. Caroline released her wrist slowly after that. Not because she fully agreed. Because some moments in life arrive too late to stop anymore. Emma slipped on her winter coat while the apartment heater clicked softly behind them. Her snowflake necklace rested cold against her skin beneath the fabric. Same necklace from the photograph. Same one William Brooks gave her mother before everything fell apart. Be careful, Caroline whispered as Emma reached the apartment door. Emma nodded once and stepped into the cold hallway without another word. Outside, snow covered the sidewalk in fresh white layers untouched except for Nathaniel's footprints beneath the streetlight. He looked up immediately when Emma exited the building. For one strange moment, neither moved toward the other. Manhattan traffic hummed faintly in the distance, while winter wind carried snow between them like scattered pieces of unfinished memory. Nathaniel finally spoke first. I read the back of the photograph. Emma folded her arms tightly against the cold. I figured. Nathaniel looked down briefly at the picture in his hand before speaking again. My father never mentioned another daughter. Emma almost smiled sadly at that. My mother used to say silence was his favorite language. Nathaniel studied her carefully now beneath the streetlight glow. No makeup, no polished confidence. Just a waitress standing in the snow trying to stay steady beneath truths too large for either of them. Yet the resemblance had become impossible to ignore. Not identical, but undeniable. Same eyes, same quiet expressions when thinking, same tendency to hide emotion behind stillness. Nathaniel swallowed slowly. How long have you known? Since last night. And before that? Emma shook her head gently. I grew up thinking my father simply disappeared. Nathaniel looked away toward the snowy street. He disappeared from me too, eventually. Silence settled again. Softer this time. Not hostile. Just heavy. Emma watched snow gather across Nathaniel's coat shoulders while expensive black cars passed slowly behind him through the storm. Billionaire. Investor. Public figure. Yet standing here now, he looked less like a powerful man and more like someone realizing his family history had never belonged entirely to him. My mother kept letters, Emma said quietly. Nathaniel looked up immediately. Letters? Emma nodded once. From your father. Nathaniel's jaw tightened faintly. Can I see them? Emma hesitated. Not because she feared him. Because those letters were the only proof her mother had that William Brooks once loved them at all. Nathaniel seemed to understand the hesitation immediately. You do not have to decide tonight. Emma glanced toward the apartment windows above them, where her mother's silhouette remained faintly visible behind old curtains. He wanted to tell you, she whispered softly. Nathaniel frowned slightly. Tell me what? Emma looked directly at him for the first time since coming downstairs. That I existed. The words landed harder than either expected. Nathaniel closed his eyes briefly against the cold wind. Somewhere deep beneath years of wealth and discipline and carefully controlled emotions, something cracked quietly inside him. Because suddenly he remembered strange moments from childhood that never made sense before. His father disappearing for days every winter. Private phone calls ending abruptly when Nathaniel entered rooms. Christmas Eve drives through Brooklyn his father always insisted on taking alone. He knew. Nathaniel whispered mostly to himself. Emma nodded faintly. He was trying to fix it before he died. Snow drifted around them while both stood silently beside the streetlight connected by a man neither fully understood anymore. Finally, Nathaniel looked toward Emma again. There is something else. His voice sounded quieter now, less guarded. The day my father died, he hesitated briefly. He tried to say a name before the ambulance took him. Emma's heartbeat slowed painfully. What name? Nathaniel stared at the photograph in his hand. Emma. Neither spoke after that. They simply stood together beneath the snowfall while decades of separation quietly rearranged themselves into truth. Somewhere nearby, church bells rang softly through the winter night. And for the first time since William Brooks died, two people carrying different versions of the same loss finally understood they had never been strangers at all. 3 days passed after the conversation beneath the Brooklyn streetlight, yet nothing inside either of their lives returned to normal afterward. Manhattan continued moving through winter as if nothing extraordinary had happened. Taxis rushed beneath snow-covered traffic lights. Investors crowded luxury restaurants discussing markets and acquisitions. Waitresses carried coffee through crowded diners while pretending exhaustion did not ache through their shoulders. But somewhere quietly between Brooklyn and Manhattan, two strangers connected by the same father kept thinking about each other in ways neither fully understood. Emma Collins returned to Bellamy's Steakhouse every morning before sunrise, tying her black apron beneath warm kitchen lights while trying to convince herself life could still feel ordinary. It never quite did, because now every familiar thing carried a second meaning. The snowflake necklace around her neck. Her mother's silence whenever William Brooks's name appeared on television business reports. Even the old letters hidden inside the apartment kitchen drawer felt heavier somehow. Like pieces of unfinished history waiting too long to breathe. You keep staring at rich people like one of them owes you money, Mia whispered while arranging wine glasses beside her. Emma looked up immediately. What? Mia smirked slightly. You heard me. Emma forced herself to focus on polishing silverware again. I am tired. No, Mia leaned closer. You are distracted. Before Emma could answer, the front restaurant doors opened and cold winter air swept softly through Bellamy's. Emma looked up automatically. Nathaniel Brooks stood near the entrance wearing a dark charcoal coat dusted lightly with snow. No assistants this time. No security. Just him. Mia blinked slowly beside Emma. Okay, she whispered under her breath. Now I am definitely listening. Nathaniel's eyes found Emma almost immediately across the dining room. Something about that unsettled her every single time now. Not attraction, not romance, recognition. Like both of them were still trying to understand why the other person suddenly felt strangely familiar. Nathaniel approached calmly while the lunch crowd quietly noticed one of the most powerful businessmen in New York walking directly toward a waitress carrying folded napkins. You came back, Emma said softly once he stopped beside the counter. Nathaniel removed one leather glove carefully. You sound surprised. Emma glanced briefly toward the snowy street outside. People like you usually disappear once things become complicated. Nathaniel looked at her for a moment longer than necessary. People like me? Emma immediately regretted the wording. I just meant, I know what you meant. But his voice carried no anger, only tired understanding. Nathaniel reached into his coat pocket slowly and removed a small, folded piece of paper. I found something in my father's office yesterday. Emma hesitated before taking it. The paper felt old, delicate. She unfolded it carefully beneath the warm restaurant lights. Her breath caught instantly. A birth certificate. Emma Collins. Father, William Brooks. The world around her seemed to quiet all over again. Restaurant conversations faded. Glasses clinked somewhere far away. Emma stared at the document while her fingers trembled softly against the edges. Nathaniel watched her carefully. He kept it hidden inside a law textbook in his private study. Emma looked up slowly. Why would he keep this? Nathaniel glanced toward the snow falling beyond the windows. Maybe because throwing it away would have made everything final. Emma lowered her eyes again toward the paper. Official proof. Cold black ink confirming something emotional truths had already whispered for days. My mother never filed for support, she said quietly. Nathaniel nodded once. I know. Emma looked surprised. Nathaniel continued carefully. My father created a private trust account 20 years ago under anonymous names. Emma's expression tightened. For us. For you. Silence settled heavily between them again. Nathaniel leaned slightly against the counter now, less formal than before. More human somehow. He paid your school tuition anonymously too. Emma blinked quickly. What? Columbia University. Nathaniel's voice softened almost imperceptibly. Your scholarships covered most of it. My father covered the rest. Emma suddenly remembered mysterious checks arriving during freshman year after her mother lost hours at work. Caroline always claimed an old family friend helped them quietly. Emma swallowed painfully. He was there the whole time. Nathaniel looked toward her snowflake necklace resting softly against the black fabric of her uniform. Just not openly. Emma folded the birth certificate slowly and handed it back. That does not erase disappearing. Nathaniel accepted the paper without argument. No, it does not. For the first time since meeting him, Emma noticed something unexpected in Nathaniel Brooks. Regret. Not for himself exactly. For his father. For the years neither of them received honestly. I spent most of my life angry at him too, Nathaniel admitted quietly. Emma looked up at that. Nathaniel rarely sounded vulnerable. Why? She asked softly. He glanced toward the nearly untouched coffee cup sitting on the counter nearby. Because after my mother died, he became a man filled with unfinished apologies. Snow drifted endlessly beyond the restaurant windows while Nathaniel stared somewhere far beyond Manhattan. I thought grief changed him. His voice lowered. Now I think guilt did. Emma felt something ache unexpectedly inside her chest hearing that. Because for the first time, William Brooks no longer felt like two separate fathers divided between two lives. Just one flawed man who failed differently in different directions. Mia appeared suddenly beside them holding menus, pretending to organize tables while obviously listening. Can I get either of you coffee? Nathaniel almost smiled faintly. Please. Emma looked surprised. You drink coffee? Nathaniel glanced toward her calmly. Apparently people with my last name survive on it. Emma laughed softly before she could stop herself. Small. Brief. Real. Nathaniel noticed immediately. The sound seemed to catch him off guard in ways billion-dollar negotiations never could. Mia walked away grinning to herself while Emma poured fresh coffee into a white ceramic cup. Nathaniel washed her hands carefully. Same steady movements. Same quiet patience his father once carried, while teaching him how to tie fishing lines during summers in Maine long before wealth complicated everything. Emma, Nathaniel said quietly after a moment. She looked up. "There is something else I need to ask you." His expression shifted slightly then. More serious now. "Would you come to my father's house tomorrow?" Emma froze instantly. Nathaniel continued softly. "I think there are things there both of us deserve to understand." The Brooks estate stood at the edge of Manhattan, like something untouched by time. Snow covered the iron gates and stone pathways while tall windows glowed softly against the gray winter afternoon. Emma Collins stepped carefully out of Nathaniel Brooks's black sedan and looked up at the enormous house rising before her beneath bare oak trees dusted white with snow. She had spent most of her life serving wealthy people inside restaurants without ever imagining how they lived once the doors closed behind them. Now she stood outside the home her father built for another family, while cold wind wrapped around her coat sleeves. Nathaniel walked beside her in silence up the stone steps. No reporters waited outside. No assistants hovered nearby. For once, billionaire Nathaniel Brooks looked less like a public figure and more like a son carrying unfinished questions back into a house filled with memories. "You do not have to stay long," he said quietly while unlocking the front door. Emma nodded faintly, even though she was not sure whether she wanted to leave quickly or never leave at all. Warm air greeted them immediately inside, along with the scent of cedar wood and old books. The house felt elegant without trying too hard. Cream-colored walls, dark polished floors, family portraits beneath soft golden lighting. Everything expensive, everything carefully preserved. Emma removed her gloves slowly while taking in the quiet around her. No laughter, no movement, just silence shaped by loss. Nathaniel closed the door behind them gently. "After my father died, I stopped hosting holidays here." Emma looked toward a massive staircase curving upward beneath a crystal chandelier. "Why?" Nathaniel loosened his coat slightly. "Because every room reminded me of someone missing." The honesty in his voice surprised both of them a little. Emma followed him through the house, while snow drifted softly beyond tall windows overlooking the frozen garden outside. They passed framed photographs lining the hallway walls. Nathaniel as a child beside William Brooks during fishing trips. Charity galas. Graduation ceremonies. Carefully captured moments from a life that looked complete from the outside. Emma slowed near one photograph showing William Brooks standing beside a Christmas tree holding a small wrapped present. The expression on his face stopped her. Sadness hidden behind a smile practiced too often. Nathaniel noticed immediately. "You see it too." Emma glanced toward him. "What?" Nathaniel looked back at the photograph quietly. He always looked like part of him was somewhere else. Neither spoke after that. Nathaniel finally led her into a large private study-lined floor-to-ceiling with dark walnut bookshelves. Snowlight reflected softly across the leather chairs and fireplace mantel, while dust floated through warm afternoon sunlight. This room felt different from the rest of the house somehow. More personal, less polished. "My father spent most nights here after my mother died," Nathaniel said softly. Emma walked slowly toward the desk near the windows. Papers remained stacked neatly beside old fountain pens, and reading glasses left exactly where William Brooks last touched them, like someone expected him to walk back into the room at any moment. Nathaniel opened one of the desk drawers carefully. "I found something else yesterday." He removed a small velvet box and placed it gently onto the desk between them. Emma hesitated before opening it. Inside rested another snowflake necklace nearly identical to the one hidden beneath her sweater. Emma stared silently. "My father kept this in his desk for years," Nathaniel explained quietly. "I never understood why there were two." Emma reached slowly toward her own necklace beneath her collar. Her fingers trembled softly against the silver chain. "He gave mine to my mother before I was born." Nathaniel leaned lightly against the desk while watching her expression. Then he kept the second one. Silence settled heavily inside the study while the fire crackled softly nearby. Emma looked around the room again, more carefully this time. Then something on the bookshelf caught her attention instantly. A framed photograph partially hidden behind several law books. She walked toward it slowly. Her breath stopped. It was another picture of her, older than the first one, maybe 8 years old, sitting on a park bench feeding pigeons beside Caroline Collins. Emma picked up the frame carefully with trembling hands. "Nathaniel." He crossed the room quickly and froze beside her when he saw the photograph. "I have never seen this before." Emma turned the frame over slowly. On the back, William Brooks's handwriting appeared once again. "Brooklyn, Sunday mornings." My girls deserved better than secrets. Nathaniel closed his eyes briefly. Emma felt tears rise unexpectedly inside her chest while staring at the picture. Her father had been here, watching from a distance, carrying photographs of a daughter he never publicly claimed. He loved you, Nathaniel said quietly behind her. Emma laughed softly through tears threatening to fall. People keep saying that like it fixes things. Nathaniel remained silent because he understood. Love without courage leaves scars too. Emma carefully returned the photograph to the shelf. Did your mother know? Nathaniel looked toward the fireplace thoughtfully. I honestly do not know anymore. Snow pressed softly against the study windows while daylight slowly faded across the estate. Then Emma noticed something else resting near the back corner of William Brooks's desk. An unopened envelope with her name written carefully across the front in faded blue ink. Emma Collins. Her heartbeat slowed painfully. Nathaniel stepped closer immediately. That was not there yesterday. Emma stared at the envelope without touching it. Dust covered the edges. Old dust, meaning it had waited here unseen for years. Nathaniel looked at her carefully. I think my father left you something. Emma swallowed hard while winter light faded quietly across the room where a dead man's secrets had finally begun finding their way home. The envelope felt strangely heavy in Emma Collins's hands, even though it contained only a few folded pages. Snow drifted softly beyond the tall study windows while the fire crackled quietly against the deepening winter silence inside the Brooks estate. Nathaniel stood nearby without speaking. For once, billionaire Nathaniel Brooks looked completely unsure of what came next. Emma traced her fingers lightly across the faded handwriting on the front of the envelope. Emma Collins. Written carefully, gently, like William Brooks had wanted the name itself to survive time. You should open it, Nathaniel said softly. Emma nodded faintly, but did not move immediately. Part of her had spent 26 years wanting answers from the man who disappeared from her life before she could even remember his voice. Another part feared those answers arriving too late to matter. Finally, she slid one finger beneath the seal and opened the envelope carefully. Inside rested 3 handwritten pages folded neatly together. William Brooks's handwriting covered every line. Emma's hands trembled softly as she began reading. If you are reading this, then I failed to become brave while I still had time. Emma felt her throat tighten immediately. Nathaniel lowered his eyes quietly beside her, giving her space even while standing only a few feet away. I spent my entire life building companies because numbers felt easier than people, easier than guilt, easier than choosing who deserved my honesty first. Emma swallowed hard and continued reading beneath the warm firelight. Your mother deserved better than promises whispered between train stations and late-night apologies. And you deserved better than a father who loved you quietly instead of publicly. Tears blurred the ink slightly before Emma blinked them away. Across the room, snow pressed gently against the windows while the estate remained silent except for the sound of paper shifting softly in her hands. Nathaniel finally spoke after a long moment. What does it say? Emma looked up slowly. He knew he was failing us. Nathaniel's expression tightened faintly. Not defensive. Hurt. Emma continued reading. Nathaniel carries my name, but you carry my heart. That sentence broke something quietly inside both of them. Emma lowered the paper for a moment, unable to speak. Nathaniel stared toward the fireplace while emotion moved carefully across his face like something unfamiliar. He loved you too, Emma whispered softly. Nathaniel laughed once under his breath. Sad. Controlled. He had a strange way of showing people love. Emma looked back down at the letter. There is a photograph hidden beneath the floor compartment under my desk. If the two of you ever find each other, then maybe neither of my children will have to carry my mistakes alone anymore. Nathaniel looked sharply toward the desk. Floor compartment. Emma nodded slowly. Together they moved toward the large walnut desk near the windows. Nathaniel knelt beside it first, running his fingers carefully beneath the lower panels until he found a hidden latch nearly invisible against the woodwork. A soft click echoed through the study. Then a narrow compartment opened beneath the desk floor. Inside rested only one thing. A framed photograph wrapped carefully in cloth. Nathaniel lifted it slowly while Emma held her breath beside him. He unwrapped the cloth gently. Both froze instantly. The photograph showed William Brooks sitting between 2 children beneath Christmas lights inside this very house nearly 20 years earlier. Young Nathaniel smiled proudly beside him, holding a toy train. And on William's other side sat a little blonde girl wearing a snowflake necklace. Emma. Inside the Brooks family home, Nathaniel stared silently at the picture while Emma felt tears finally slip down her face. "I do not remember this," she whispered. Nathaniel turned the frame over slowly. December 23rd. One perfect night before fear ruined everything. William's handwriting again. Emma covered her mouth softly while emotion flooded through years of unanswered questions. She had been here, not as a stranger hidden away in Brooklyn, not as a secret forgotten by accident. William Brooks once tried, however briefly, to bring both worlds together. Nathaniel sat quietly on the floor beside the desk, still holding the photograph. "My mother must have found out after this." Emma looked toward him slowly. "You think that is why he stopped?" Nathaniel nodded faintly. Evelyn Brooks protected appearances more than emotions. He swallowed carefully before continuing. "But I do not think my father ever stopped thinking about you." Snow drifted endlessly outside, while the fire warmed the room, where two lives finally began fitting together correctly. Emma sat beside Nathaniel on the rug near the desk, both staring silently at the old photograph between them. "All those years," Emma whispered softly. "He could have just told the truth." Nathaniel looked toward the flames moving behind the fireplace glass. People raised around power usually confuse silence with protection. Emma thought about her mother struggling through hospital bills and double shifts, while William Brooks built skyscrapers in Manhattan, carrying photographs of both children hidden inside his wallet. Love existed there, but courage did not always arrive beside it. Nathaniel finally looked toward Emma again. "I cannot change what he did." Emma nodded faintly. "I know, but I do not want you disappearing after tonight." The honesty in his voice settled quietly between them. No business tone, no billionaire confidence. Just a man sitting beside his sister for the first time in his life, trying not to lose another family member before understanding her properly. Emma looked down at the photograph again. Young Nathaniel smiling beneath Christmas lights. William Brooks sitting between both children like he desperately wanted the moment to survive longer than it did. "Neither do I," she admitted softly. Evening darkness slowly filled the estate while snow continued falling across Manhattan. Hours later, after long conversations and old photographs and stories traded carefully between strangers becoming family, Nathaniel walked Emma toward the front door beneath the warm golden lights of the house. She paused before leaving and glanced back once more toward the quiet hallway lined with Brooks' family photographs. "This house feels less empty now," Nathaniel said quietly behind her. Emma looked toward him. For the first time since meeting him, the distance inside his expression had softened. Not completely, but enough. Emma smiled sadly. Maybe some families just take longer to find each other. Outside, snow covered the city in silence while behind them, inside the old study, William Brooks's faded photograph finally rested where it always belonged. Not hidden inside a wallet, not buried beneath secrets, but out in the open between both of his children at last.